Welcome, all you sinners and sodomites, to episode 21 of Bible Stories for Atheists. I am Josh.
I'm Linz.
And we are your guides to the testifiably tedious stories, literally littering the Bible.
And holy fuck, is that an accurate statement this week?
Yeah.
Oh my
is
God.
Testifiably tedious.
Holy shit. Literally. When people are like, I don't read the Bible because it's boring, this is what they're talking about.
we're really selling this one, aren't we?
I mean, we're amazing as always.
Yes.
It's just, the source material gets rough sometimes. And this is definitely one of those times. I mean, when you're writing a rule book, eventually you're going to run into a section that has a lot of rules guised as like parables.
Right.
And in just tedious metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus gets real and is naive.
Yeah.
On this one.
Yeah.
He's going off on...
Like the guy that you see in the corner of the city holding the sign that says the end is near.
Yeah.
That's the real Jesus vibe.
It's a lot of it in this episode. So that brings it all down, And then we ended up going into this whole rant. I don't know how much of it we're going to keep.
Is it a rant?
Not a rant, but we got into a sidetrack where we talked about like why... what it would take to get you to not be an atheist and stuff like that. That somehow came up when we were talking through this, but that was interesting.
I hope that, and so we're saying this ahead of like when you actually do the edit to the podcast, just a little inside baseball there. But like, I hope you keep some of it in because I think it's important for people who are religious to like kind of understand where people like us are coming from.
Right.
And even the kind of like the difference between you and I, even as atheists.
Yeah.
And you having had faith and then becoming an atheist, and me just kind of not really ever buying into the whole thing.
Yeah. You can look forward to that whole thing
I would
where
say
we get into it.
This is less comical of a podcast than we normally do. But definitely, I think Josh and I started this podcast with discussions back and forth about religion and our ideas about it and things like that. And so this podcast isn't always going to be funny, although we are hilarious.
We are.
So funny. The funniest people I know.
Especially Linz.
Totally. And I'm very modest about it.
Yes.
But like every once in a while, we're going to get into like the back and forth of more philosophical ideas, I guess.
Which is exactly what we do all the time offline.
Oh my God. If you were in our house with us, you would probably be like, oh, this is just like Jesus and the parables.
Yeah.
It's so boring.
Right. We get into a bunch of that kind of stuff, a bunch of Jesus going through parables, and we end up with one healing and everything, but it's a lot of stuff we've kind of heard before in different ways.
I just learned that you have like a 50-50 chance of like getting into heaven.
Yeah. It seems like, it's one person will get in and then the other person is going to be left
gnashing teeth,
grinding themselves.
Yeah. On what?
On the hand grinder. Yeah.
It's the ancient term for a vibrator.
Right.
Hand grinder.
One thing I did notice is this episode is coming out on Orthodox Easter.
Oh, is that different than regular Easter?
It is. It is different. Well, slightly. I mean, it's on a different day.
Okay.
It's a week later.
Oh.
So at some point in the future, when I actually plan ahead a little bit better, we'll do like an episode on Easter.
Sure. I would love to do an episode on Easter because it's very pagan.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So Orthodox Easter is Easter for people who are in the Eastern Orthodox Christianity.
Okay.
Right. For those who don't know, back in the year 1054.
Okay.
There's this thing called the Great Schism, which is where the Catholic Church split
from Christianity.
So the Catholic Church, like literally as a group,
the church split. So then you got the regular Catholics and then the Orthodox Church,
and then the Eastern Orthodox Church. Yep. So Eastern Orthodox Church didn't really like that the Pope had all this authority. Mm-hmm. So they decided to go their own way. So now in a lot of Eastern European regions...
Well, I know there's a Greek Orthodox Church.
There is Greek Orthodox.
There's a Russian Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yep. And so this is mainly in the Southeast, in Eastern Europe, Cyprus, Georgia, and parts of the Caucasus region, Siberia, far
that's where
Russian
Caucasians come from, Josh.
Yeah, the Caucasus area. Yeah.
And they just think that Easter comes a week later?
So what's interesting is the Catholic Church uses the Gregorian calendar. which was instituted under Pope Gregory the 13th.
That's why it's called the Gregorian calendar.
Yep, exactly. So, and this came after the schism, and since the Eastern Orthodox Christians
don't follow the
Pope, they're still using the Julian calendar.
Okay.
That was from Julius Caesar.
Right.
And the Julian calendar.
I really wish they called it the Caesarian calendar.
So the Julian calendar has this. The whole reason why they got rid of it is because every day it like overshoots by a few minutes, which is like the Gregorian calendar added in leap years to account for that. Easter, as it's commonly celebrated in the United States, falls on the first Sunday after the first full moon of the spring equinox.
Because it's based on a pagan religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That the moon factors into this at all. Right. And that's always between March 22nd and April 25th. While Orthodox Easter is celebrated on the Sunday after the first full moon after Passover, which is between April 4th and May 8th.
Okay.
So that's how they end up different. They also have differences in Lent. Catholics have Lent, and then Orthodox, guess what they call it?
Lent.
They call it Great Lent.
Great Lent.
It's Great Lent for them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lent starts on Ash Wednesday for Catholics. It starts on Clean Monday.
Clean Monday.
For Orthodox. Yeah.
So they don't get a Fat Tuesday.
I guess not.
No punchkis for them.
No. And I don't know everything about this stuff, but this is just a few things I picked up ahead of time, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And then they also have Great Lent ends with Lazarus Saturday, which celebrates Lazarus.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's still like another week of fasting after that, but I think that you have a feast on Lazarus Saturday.
All right.
So strap in, strap on for episode 21. Here's some mud in your eye. Okay. Anyway. Shenanigans.
Shenanigans. Shenanigans. I don't hear it in my headphones.
All right.
Is it really that loud on your side? I'm wondering if it's your headphones then, because it's like literally I don't really hear what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's not that loud. It's just, for me, it's like, what the fuck?
Oh.
You know, like,
is it
where
is
it coming
your brain?
from?
Is it coming from your brain?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I probably just need to buy way more expensive
headphones.
Cords.
Oh, now that we have the good headphones.
You know what? That's
Jenny with the good hair.
It's the new microphones.
Picking up more sound, maybe.
Yeah.
Because they're really good.
Maybe. I mean, they're a little bit better than the other ones we had. Maybe when I'm actually done processing it, then you won't hear it at all.
Right.
And this is nonsense to anybody listening to it.
All right, this is going to be part of the podcast? How boring.
You never know.
So boring.
Well, we try and start off boring and then just build from there.
I didn't realize that was our goal.
That's how you succeed. You put the hook at the end when everybody's left.
I think
because then it's just for the people who really get you.
I think we might have a problem here.
Yeah.
If that's what you're doing.
Anyway, previously on BSFA, we had the story of the Good Samaritan. A little bit more about Mary and Martha.
Yep.
This was the story where it was like just about Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Their brother supposedly didn't come up at all. And Martha was like, Mary, Mary, Mary.
Do you think that Jesus is the Batman or the Superman of this scenario?
Jesus is the Batman or the Superman of the scenario?
Yeah, because of Martha, right?
Oh, Jesus would probably be the Superman.
I would think right?
He'd be Superman.
Yeah, he's got powers. Batman is just smart. Lazarus, I don't think qualifies under, because the only thing we know about Lazarus is that he died, which doesn't make him smart or strong at all. Just feeble.
Yeah, just mortal.
Yeah.
We covered the Lord's Prayer. We went into this whole thing about Mary, Jesus's mom, being blessed among women and how the Gospel of Luke seemed to have a real fetish for Mary.
Yeah. That's where the Catholics get their Mary fetish, I assume.
A lot of it comes from the Gospel of Luke. Jesus went off on the Pharisees too. There was that thing where in one version he was at a dinner. He was invited to dinner with a Pharisee, and he just goes off on the guy at the dinner.
Right.
And,
just for everyone listening, if you're listening to these back to back, then you're probably like, why the fuck is he re-explaining all of this? And it's literally for my benefit.
Yeah.
It's
because it's every 2 weeks we record it. So and also for the listener. We do it for the listener too.
The ones who listen immediately and then have to wait.
Well, the ones who jump in. Also, anybody who just jumping in, it might not know. Like, oh, hey, you covered the Lord's Prayer. That would be interesting to go back to you and stuff.
Interesting is not the word I would use, but
it'd be interesting to see how they talk about it.
Right. That's better. Yeah.
And how they jackassery about it.
Right. What did Lindsay make fun of this time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of vocal effects did they use for God, the voice of God? So this week we're going to kick off with the blind man at Bethsaida.
There's a lot of blind people in the Bible.
Yeah, there was a lot of blind people back then, I think.
You think it's mercury poisoning?
Probably lead poisoning.
Something, yeah. Because, I know that there are blind people who exist in the world today, and there's probably quite a few, but, the amount of blind people that I run into on, a day-to-day basis is very low.
Well, that's because of the spread of Christianity.
No.
It's definitely not the science or the medical science.
Well, I was just thinking, per square mile, there's maybe less blind people, and it could be because of less mercury poisoning and less lead poisoning.
Could be, yeah. I mean, likely it's because of a lot of environmental actions that we've taken.
Doesn't syphilis make you blind or something too? Chlamydia,
maybe. I don't know.
One of those sexually transmitted diseases.
I wouldn't know. I don't know. I was raised Christian. I wasn't allowed to pay attention in sex ed.
You didn't take health class.
I wasn't allowed to pay attention in sex ed. That's not true.
You got the teacher's note. He was in homeschool at that time. His mom didn't teach him sex ed.
A lot of the sex ed was throughout homeschool. I did get a year of, so I was homeschooled. This is something that probably I don't think has come up before on the podcast, but I was homeschooled for a while when I was younger.
Yep.
And I think I got a year of sex ed. I got the first one, the watching the video and explaining the tubes. Whatnots.
The fallopian tubes? Is that the tubes you're referring to?
All the tubes.
The vas deferens.
All the human tubes.
Vaginal canal.
Yeah.
I mean, what other tubes are there?
Men have tubes.
I said the vas deferens.
Oh, I don't see it, and I don't know what that is because I didn't pay attention in all this. But I don't think they broke that out in middle school either. These are called the vas deferens, or if they did, it was nobody's paying attention to the long technical terms.
I guess I did.
So I had that 1 year, but then I ended up going back for high school.
Right.
So I really only did most of middle school homeschool. And I was amazed that, you still get sex ed? I thought that was a one-time thing, where you learn what sex is, and then that's it.
Sure.
So I had no idea that they kept it going.
Not all schools, I only got 1 year of sex ed in middle school.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it wasn't an ongoing. I mean, it might have come up in biology under not sex ed, just the biological makeup of humans.
Yeah.
But.
So when I went to high school, then it was more about STDs and stuff like that. And safe sex and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, they taught you about safe sex?
I think so. It seems like they would have.
Usually strictly forbidden in public schools.
I think they told you about condoms and everything. I don't think we ever did the banana.
Right. How to put them on properly.
Yeah. But very
important part.
Right. Yeah. It would have been useful later in life to be able to figure that, to know how to do that. But nope, didn't get that. It was probably because the school couldn't afford
bananas.
Condoms. And bananas. Condoms were really out of the question.
Well, bananas. Couldn't
afford the bananas.
The bananas you just then take to the lunch. They're all slimy with lube on them. And the kids are like, bananas flying everywhere.
People are slipping on them. It's like a total cartoon. We told you sex ed would kill people. God damn it, Karen.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, I don't even know why we got on that.
Because blind men in Bethsaida.
Oh, yes. All right. And sexually transmitted diseases that cause blindness. Okay. Right. It's my bad. That was my bad. Sorry.
So there's this blind man in Bethsaida. And this is Mark 8:22 through 26, John 9:1 through 7. Mark's version goes like this. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit in the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, "Don't even go into the village." And that's the story.
Don't even go into the village.
Don't even go into the village.
Very threatening. Like,
yeah.
He spit in his eyes?
He spit in his eyes before he touched his eyes.
Do you think that he needed to spit in his eyes, or do you think Jesus just wanted to spit in his eyes?
He's healed several blind people so far and never once had to spit in their eyes.
Yeah. So he was just like,
I'm so sick of this.
Yeah. I'm gonna change things up a little bit.
This will make people want to stop asking me to heal them.
It's I either have to take a saliva load from Jesus straight in the eyeball or
be blind.
Just be blind. And I don't know. I'm going to have to think about this.
It seems a little unsanitary.
It's Jesus spit. So is it?
Name of the episode.
It fits the theme of the last couple of ones that we've had up. Okay. And then he basically like mob boss threatens him not to go into the village.
Right.
But
so
this is why.
Right. Well, not in this version.
Okay.
So there's a footnote for this. Basically is what this footnote is saying is some manuscripts would have him saying, "Don't even go into the village and tell anyone."
Okay.
Basically is.
Right. I mean, that fits Jesus's MO.
So it's him basically saying, "Don't tell anyone." But some manuscripts say, "Don't go into the village at all," basically.
Right.
So.
Well, a well-known blind man coming into the village will definitely raise questions.
Yes, it will. And it does in John's version.
Oh.
Which is it's much more in-depth, actually. So in John's version, it goes like this. And keep in mind, John is a much better writer.
Right.
Though much more anti-Semitic.
As we've discussed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we find out in this.
We don't want to give John's version like ups without also mentioning that
he did not like Jewish people.
Right.
So it goes like this. As he went along, he saw a bland man.
A bland man.
He's
so bland.
So he spit in his face.
Jesus spice.
And he got rid of his blandness. You have been spiced by Jesus.
Next on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. Are you bland?
Jesus is going to spice you up. As he went along, he saw a blind man from birth. Don't know how he knows that he was blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus responds, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Really making it all about him.
Well, of course, yeah.
He didn't sin and his parents didn't sin. He's just blind because God wants his glory, He
wants to, it was planned from the start that Jesus would come spit in his eye.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I guess.
Yes, apparently. So I don't know how old this guy is, but he's been blind for all these years. Wouldn't that make you
mad? I would be mad at God then. I would have been like, really? Really? I have to not see my whole life because you need to have the works of God flow through me or some bullshit like that. Fuck you. Figure out a different way.
Right. After saying this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes.
Oh.
Which is interesting to me because it kind of harkens back to Adam being made from the dust.
Oh,
from mud.
Clay or whatever.
Yeah. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. And then that says in parentheses here, this word means sent. So the man went and washed, and he came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed he was. Others said, no, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. How then were your eyes opened? They asked. He replied, the man they called Jesus made some mud and put it into my eyes. He told me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see. Where is this man? They asked him. I don't know, he said.
I couldn't see him.
Yeah, I didn't see where he went.
I was still blind
yeah.
when he did the mud thing, and then I left, and he's probably gone now.
I'm actually not even sure if that was Jesus.
He could have just said it was, but it worked. So, what a different story. Same story, but in the other story, he spit directly in the person's eyes.
Also, he was brought to him by people who could see.
Right. And this one, he comes across him.
Just comes across
and puts spit mud in his eye. In his eye or on his
in his eyes.
So literally touching his eyeballs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then he goes and washes it out.
God's love is painful sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you're fair. In a pool of scent.
Pool of scent. Yeah, pool called scent.
Yeah. Scent, SCENT or SCNT?
Yeah.
So is it just
Siloam?
Washing in a thing of perfume? Or?
I think it's just what they call it.
Oh, okay.
It's just the name of the pool.
Gotcha. They're so similar that you can kind of just ignore the discrepancies in them. I mean, at the end of the day, the result is the same. But I think there's a little bit of difference between somebody spitting directly in your eye and curing you immediately and then being don't fucking talk about it and putting mud in your eyes and then fucking off before you can even see again.
Yeah.
And then having a village react to it. That version seems... Neither version seems likely, but that version seems more likely that that's the order of events that would take place.
I don't know. It's like I said, John is a better writer.
Yeah.
And he definitely knows how to tell a story better than the other ones, where it's the other ones are making it more about this happened, then this happened, then this happened, whereas John knows how to tell a narrative, including, we'll probably cover it in a future episode, but this goes on from here into the rabbis and stuff being did he cure you on the Sabbath? And this whole interrogation of the guy and stuff. It's really, they really are obsessed with that. Him curing people. And we've got another story about that too coming up. Okay. Yeah. It's different enough though, where I'm maybe you should have done a better job of keeping notes of what happened when God was walking around.
Would you rather have instructions for the guidebook that you live your life by be flowery or be instructional? Would you rather have it just be here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's a bunch of rules?
Yeah.
Or would you rather it be and then Jesus rolled up on this blind guy and spit in the ground and made mud and put it in his eyeball. And then the guy went to the pool and washed his eyes. And then he could see. And everyone around him was like, are you the guy that was blind? And he's like, I totally am, but I'm not blind no more.
If it was accurate, I would say that's a better way of writing it.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the thing is accuracy. As long as it's not violating inaccuracy, you can write something that's pretty narrative,
sure,
while still being factual.
Okay.
But yeah, the Mark and Luke and Matthew, they didn't really do that as much.
Right.
John definitely had a better knack for that. So the next one is the exhortation to fearless confession, is what we're calling us.
Exhortation.
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 I don't know either. I probably should have looked that up ahead of time. I just took this title from the timeline.
An address or communication emphatically urging someone to do something.
And this is Matthew 10, 19 through 33, and Luke 12, 2 through 12. There's also pieces of this in Mark 4, 22, Mark 8, 38, and John 14, 26. So not really like full story or anything like that, just little bits. We largely covered this material actually when Jesus was sending out the 12 apostles, and he did that whole rant afterwards where he was going off on like, you know, you got to do this when you go out, and you got to, you know, your family's going to disown, like you got to disown your family and shit like that.
Sure.
Like weird, all that weird stuff that he did when he sent out the 12. One of the things it says is that you need to acknowledge God before others. And if you disown God, he'll disown you. And then here's an excerpt from Luke's passage. I tell you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body and after that can do no more. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him who, after your body has been killed, has authority to throw you into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? There's this verse again.
Sparrows, yeah.
Yeah, yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's just this weird.
So they're saying because God's the one that can throw you into hell. That's what he's talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't fear the people who can kill you here.
Right, because that's all they can do is just kill you here.
Right. Fear the person that can damn you to
eternity in hell.
Right.
Right. Because
I mean, that's fair.
It is.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if it's real, then yeah.
Right.
If it's not real, then you're really fucking up some people, you know?
Right. That's
by
true.
That,
yeah. Don't be afraid of somebody killing you. If you live a good life, you'll just end up in heaven, which is great. Right. But, you know, live your life holy or else you're going to get some anal action in hell.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Your penis flattened like they do in The Good Place.
Right.
So yeah, that's the it's that one.
Exhortation
to fearless confession. Parable of the rich fool. So this is going to be a lot of parables in this one.
Okay.
Luke 12, 13 through 21. It goes like this. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or arbiter between you?" I'm guessing is how he said that. Man. He might have been like, man, you know.
Yeah, I don't know your name.
Yeah.
Because it's not like I'm fucking God and know everything. So I'm just going to refer to you as your
man.
Yeah.
Your gender.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like to think of it as like, he's like, man, who appointed me as a judge or an arbiter between you? Then he said to him, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist of an abundance of possessions. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry.
Mm-hmm.
But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. That is the parable of the rich fool.
But all that tells to me is that you can be rich as long as you believe in God. It doesn't say like, don't hoard wealth. It says,
you don't think so?
Well, so read that last one again, the last line.
It said, this is how it will be with whomever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God.
Right. So what does rich towards God mean?
That's a really good question.
Because rich people could read that and say, well, I am rich towards God.
Yeah.
because I believe in God.
I donate to the church.
But other than that, they're hoarding crazy amounts of wealth. I mean, we all know who I'm talking about right now.
Right.
It doesn't say like if you have an excess of wealth, then share it amongst those less fortunate than you. I mean, it might say it in other parts of the Bible, but like if you're going to pick apart the Bible and choose pieces to believe in, this doesn't really say don't do that. It just says it's okay if you do that, to me, as long as you're also like, rocking the God train.
Yeah. It's interesting because I read it totally differently.
Yeah.
I read it like you shouldn't even have a savings account.
Really?
Yeah. I took it to the other extreme of it.
Right.
But it's interesting. Yeah. Because that just goes to show you can read this either direction.
Right. Right.
Like it's totally up for your own personal interpretation.
Right.
So yeah, there's no clear cut.
Because the minute you started talking about it, I went back to that Kirk Cameron Christmas movie where he talks about how getting presents at Christmas is like holy.
Right. Yeah.
And then you said that and I was like, well, that is in direct violation of that idea. But then when you said that last part, I was like, oh, well, but no, because Kirk Cameron thinks that he is rich in God.
Right.
Because he does all of this proselytizing for God, right? And stuff like that. So he feels he's probably completely justified in doing whatever he needs to do when it comes to his wealth.
Yeah, because he says Jesus a lot when he's getting paid. Therefore, he's able to be as rich as he wants.
I would imagine that's how all the mega churches and shit look at it too,
Yeah, it's fucking sad.
It is.
That's how they look at it, but you're totally right. I did look up some common interpretations of this, like what the Christians think this means. And basically, this is probably no surprise to anybody, but it basically means that your goal in life should not be wealth.
Right.
That it should be set on things more godly.
Sure.
But
if you also believe that you have wealth because you believe in God.
Yeah, that's just insane.
That's
just insane.
He's rewarded you on earth.
Yeah.
But we've discussed numerous times how like if you live a good life on earth, then you're not going to have a good life in heaven.
Right.
And stuff like that. So but it's just, like somebody who, as we go through the Bible and we come across things, because we're doing it, I would say not quickly, but like in a way where it's very easy to come across those contradictions kind of close to each other.
Right.
With the way we're going through the Bible.
Well, yeah, like especially when you're looking at all the Gospels at the same time.
Yeah.
Comparing them to each other.
It really kind of solidifies the fact that I'm like, well, this book it shouldn't be
it's
an
incoherent
instruction manual for life. I mean, if you want to use bits and pieces of it to like make your life better, then cool.
Right.
I use comic books for that same exact reason,
Yeah.
But
when you're living by the code of Jean Grey.
Yeah, man, not Jean Grey. She like blew up a bunch of planets and stuff. But maybe Superman's a good example, right?
Yeah.
He's like the Boy Scout superhero, sort of Jesus type figure,
right?
In comic books,
and he can be updated over time, which is really convenient.
Exactly. But I mean, honestly, that is the big thing. Is like people still lose their shit if you make changes to characters like that.
Yeah,
like the hardcore fanboys,
right?
And when you think about it, like it's kind of the same thing with Christianity. Is like you have the people who are like, no, this is how it's always been. This is how it should be.
Right.
And then you get
stop retconning our religion.
Yes. But then you do get some like there are modern Christians.
Yeah.
And younger people who are gay and also Christian who interpret the Bible in a different way and are like, well, this isn't set in stone. This is what we feel it believes.
Yeah.
And it's completely different than what everybody else thinks.
Right.
And then everyone around them loses their shit because they're changing the interpretation of something that's been around for years. But maybe it's time.
Yeah.
We have rewrites.
Yeah.
In the Bible.
Maybe we shouldn't, be propping up religion that says that it's okay for slavery to exist.
Yeah.
And that women shouldn't be teachers and things like that.
And I guess that's what all of the because there's new, what do they call it? New versions of the Bible, new translations of the Bible all the time. Or they like the one you're using isn't the most recent version of that, right?
Oh, the NIV.
Yeah, like they update that, and I assume that means they update like the footnotes and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so they did like a big in 2020. I think they released a huge update to all of that stuff, like all the study materials that go along with the Bible.
Because that's really the only thing you can do.
And they do the translation itself too, but that's like smaller changes to individual words, what they mean and stuff like that. You know, better understanding, scholarly is the idea behind it, although the NIV is not like a great one.
Right.
And we've covered actually before a few times where NIV just conveniently interprets stuff in a certain way to make sure that, you know, it stays.
Fits.
To make sure it fits with the overall story and better when actually it just doesn't make any sense. But anywho.
Sorry.
It's okay.
It's just really, I mean, coming at it from a non-belief perspective and a long-term non-belief perspective, like the idea of an instruction manual being so set in stone for so long is weird to me. Although, as you said, they do add updates to like the study guides and interpretations. And like, there's probably things in this version of the NIV that like 20 years ago, they wouldn't have put that footnote in or something like that. So maybe they are, I guess, kind of trying to do that.
Yeah. I don't know if the NIV is where you would look for that though. The only reason why we go through the NIV is because that's what I grew up reading.
Right.
And it's pretty common in a lot of Christian, especially more conservative Protestant Christian circles in the U.S. But there are other interpretations. There are other translations that are more accurate ones that are out there. There was one in episode 10 when we went through everything on the Old Testament and the actual history of the Old Testament. There are ones that talk about the 4 sources for that, for the first 5 books of the Bible. They talk openly about, here's what we understand, that Moses didn't actually write the first 5 books of the Bible. And it was written by at least 4 people, and it was put together by this other person. And
well, that's because Catholics think they know more than everybody else.
I guess. I don't know if that's all Catholic translations too either, but like, or if it's just this one I happen to find.
Right.
But you know, there are definitely a wide variety out there. And that's what I really appreciate though, is like when you come across ones where it's like, well, we don't really know how this fits with our beliefs, but this is where the facts are leading us.
Right.
And we're going to have to deal with that. You know, there's challenges to these beliefs.
Yeah.
And we need to deal with those.
Right.
But we can't just like have ostrich syndrome and bury our heads in the sand about it. We need to actually address it and look at it and not be afraid of confronting it.
Sure. Yeah, completely.
Or you could just gay bash people and move on with your day.
Well, like it's. I think of it in terms of like when I'm confronted with somebody who's very religious and also suffers from the ostrich syndrome. The fallback is like those are the things the atheists hyper focus on are the inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Right. Because you don't have faith.
The handful of inconsistencies.
Yeah. Because you don't have faith, then of course you don't understand.
Right.
And it's like, well, no, that's not what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand why you believe it.
Yeah.
And by you telling me you have faith isn't to me a great explanation.
What's interesting about that too is, and you're kind of talking about this, is there's a reversal of a dynamic when that happens, when you get into that kind of a position with a Christian, where instead of this being about why don't you believe, they become defensive because now it's a question of why do they believe?
Yeah.
And it's like, and they're not on solid ground with it. Like you'll feel like you're on solid ground when you're a Christian, when you're only around other Christians.
Right.
But once you're actually confronted with like, why do I believe? All of a sudden you realize you don't really have a lot of evidence or anything.
Right.
Like,
you haven't, well, they haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
Other than like, well, this is how I was raised, or this is what I was taught.
Right.
Or of course, this is what I believe.
Yeah. This is what the Bible says.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, but why would I believe in the Bible?
Yeah.
And they're like,
Yeah. But you're coming, and then the answer is a lot of times like, well, you're just looking at it wrong.
You're right.
Yeah. You're reading it wrong because you're reading it from a different perspective than what somebody who has faith reads.
Right.
And I'm like, the words are the same.
Yeah. Then how does anybody actually join this again?
Right.
Like or become a Christian?
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
why, how, like, I always think of like, what could a Christian say to me that would convert me into believing the same thing?
Yeah.
And so far, there has not been a single person. And I don't think there ever will be.
Right.
To me, there's just no good argument. But that's not saying that
there won't be.
There won't be.
Yeah.
But like for Christians who are listening to this, I don't want to fight with you. I fucking believe what you want to believe. I read comic books. I think like the X-Men are super cool. Like I get it. Jesus is fun. Like
Jesus is fun.
But like
he could fly.
Your arguments of like, well, you just have to have faith. Like that's not going to convert a lifelong atheist into Christianity. Never. I mean, and maybe if you come at me at like the hour of like my lowest point in my life.
Oh, you mean take advantage of somebody in a time of weakness?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like if I have a mental illness episode.
Kind of like what cults do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you come at me during then maybe I'll be more open to the idea of this. But like now, today, if a Christian were to come to me and like have this conversation with me, I don't think, and there's nothing I could say to change their mind, probably.
Yeah.
But
it depends on the Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that maybe like that's what you have to face as a Christian. That's what you have to start thinking about. If you're confronted with me,
right,
a hardcore non-believer, like I'm not just going to swallow that it's because you have faith. Like, but why? Why do you have faith?
Right.
What's the reason you have faith?
I know. I was actually just thinking about this the other day because I think about it all the time. What would it take to actually, believe? And one thing I came up with was, well, if there were scientific studies showing that Christians are more likely to get over illnesses and things like that would be a piece of evidence.
Sure.
Right?
They're actually praying and it's helping them health-wise.
Yeah. Like that would actually be a hard piece of evidence. Now it needs to get peer reviewed and it needs to go through the process that all scientific studies need to do. But that's like, I'm all for it.
Right.
I'm all for, like us figuring out if any religion is able to actually make people healthier, essentially. Right. But nobody's able to produce that.
No.
That's just one example, though, of like what you could look for.
Right.
Like they just.
Like if you found Noah's Ark, like if you actually found it. Like if you actually found it and not we're just like, oh, there's this rock on top of this mountain that nobody can get to that looks like maybe it could have been a boat at some point in time.
Somebody found a piece of wood, but they can't get back there or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there are things that are quantifiable that you could do to maybe convince. But even then at the end of the day.
If you could geologically prove that the entire planet was covered in water at one point.
Right.
Huge piece of evidence.
Well, I mean, technically, at one point in time, not the entire world.
No, it certainly wasn't within the last 6,000 years,
right?
Or even the last 100,000 years, or anything like that. So, but that's this kind of stuff. Like, all right, that would back it up. But every time we look for that stuff, it comes up short.
This is, I guess, the interesting point of this back and forth that we've just had is that, and I feel like this is true about a lot of atheists, maybe not all atheists. I mean, because there are just a range of atheists, just like there are a range of Christians.
Yeah.
But most atheists aren't like, I don't believe in God and nothing you can do would prove that to me.
Right.
Most atheists are like, okay, you believe in God. That's cool. I don't care. Don't interfere with my life.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Also, if you came to me with evidence like that, then I certainly would
pay attention
and examine my own beliefs.
Huge.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Let's figure out what the boundaries are for God.
Right.
What will God do in certain situations? We should figure that out.
Right.
We could backwards engineer all the faults in the Bible by figuring out when would God heal people?
Right.
What do you have to do to adhere to appeal to God in order to be healed and stuff. But you can't do that.
No.
For some reason.
Right. This is the reason why we're doing the podcast.
Yeah.
This conversation we just had is the whole reason we even started it, because it is one of those things where it's like, I don't understand. Yeah. I don't understand the appeal.
Right.
So going through the Bible is it's not making me understand the appeal,
right.
But I guess.
Yeah, at least understand the mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anywho.
Sorry.
It's okay. We ended up going on a long tangent.
I know.
You want to hear what Jesus has to say about anxiety?
Oh, I would love to, because we might be able to help every person on the planet right now that's suffering from anxiety.
Yeah, I don't know how much this is gonna help, but so this is Matthew 6, 25 through 34, and Luke 12, 22 through 31. Luke's version goes like this. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothes. Consider the ravens." It's always about the birds with Jesus. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Again, comparing us to birds for some reason.
It's a weird comparison.
Yeah. Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor, that was a king.
Right, King Solomon. Yeah.
Yep, in ancient Israel. Not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today, and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? Just turns all of a sudden. Do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Kind of a long thing, but basically saying, don't worry
about things.
Yeah, don't worry about food. Don't worry about clothes. God will provide.
But he doesn't.
No.
He does.
No, that's the problem.
There are children who die daily of starvation in this world. Don't tell me that God provides. What, death? Does he provide death? I guess maybe the answer to that is they get to go to heaven then.
In theory. Not all children go to heaven though.
I would think that most children go to heaven.
You would hope, but that's not actually biblical.
Yeah.
It's the fucked up part about that.
I know. Yeah. And comparing this to what ravens do. First of all, ravens are scavengers.
Are they? I don't know anything about ravens.
They're scavengers. They'll eat carcasses and food out of your garden and steal shit from you. And they also are attracted to shiny things. I don't think that raven is a good comparison. I think comparing people to birds in general is probably not a great analogy. Right. Also comparing us to flowers. He's saying you'll never be dressed as well as the flower. So why even bother?
Yeah, it was that. I really could not understand.
He dresses them so well, and then tomorrow they might get thrown in a fire, and you will never be dressed as well as a flower. So why? And you're not getting thrown in a fire. So why would you even bother?
Right. So be naked. That's what I would. That's what I would. If I was there and I heard Jesus say all this, I'd be like, so don't eat or be clothed.
Right.
I would not quite follow what he was saying. But
also, these things like this in the Bible are the reason why mental illness is demonized and was demonized for a really long time, because people who have anxiety, as we know today, cannot help it.
Yeah.
You cannot tell somebody that suffers from anxiety, it's fine, get over it. That's not going to just magically make them not have anxiety anymore. It is literally a misfire in their brain. And the Bible has been behind a lot of looking down on people who have mental illness for a long
being demon possessed.
Demon possessed, or it's something you can manage.
Yeah.
Why do you have anxiety? Just stop being anxious. That's the answer. It's not the answer.
Just let God worry about it.
Why are you depressed? Just stop being sad.
Right.
That's not how anything
pray
works.
about it. Just pray about it.
Yeah, just pray. It'll all go away.
And that might have some beneficial aspects to it, but you really do also need medical treatment.
Sure.
And stuff like that. And the reason why more people have gotten better from it over the more recent years than in the past is because medical science has figured out, okay, this is what the parameters of these diseases are, and here's how we can help people like this.
And the reason why prayer helps is because it's the same way going to a therapist helps.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just have to talk things through.
Yeah. Or placebo medications.
Yeah. Sure.
Which is not nothing.
Right.
It's a real thing.
The placebo effect. Yeah.
It's not like...
It's not usually a long-term fix for actual mental illness.
Yeah, neither is Christianity.
No, absolutely not. No.
That's the thing. Yeah. It's like, it's not.
Right.
Matthew's version is almost identical, but there is an interesting line at the end. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own.
I mean, I
kind of want on a bumper sticker.
I do subscribe to like living in the moment, which is kind of what that's saying. But you do have to worry about the future.
You do.
A little bit.
You need to consider it.
You need to plan for the future. Current day, you need to like be able to pay your bills. And,
I always think of it when it comes to, what it takes to believe in Christianity and what would make an atheist believe in Christianity. I always think about how God doesn't want you to be gullible. If God exists, God would not want you to be gullible.
Right.
Like, that's a weird thing. If God wanted you to be gullible, he would want you to be able to think through the logic behind why you believe in what you believe and stuff like that. And he wouldn't want you to just take stuff on faith, really. He would want you to actually know why you believe in stuff. But then you read stuff like this. If this is actually representative of God, is that really what God wants? I don't think it would be. I think the God of the Bible is kind of okay with people just living life by the seat of their pants and just trusting in him.
Right.
And
this version of God, Old Testament God was
very different.
Very different. Yeah.
You were much more on your own.
Yeah. Well, and like the expectation was that you did plan ahead. You did have to know when the Sabbath was. You did have to like plan for the offerings to him and when you had to do them and made sure you had those and things like that. Like, that's not just not worrying about the future. Like, you had to make sure you had enough sheep to sacrifice.
Make sure you sell all your slaves before the year of Jubilee when you had to set them free.
Right.
You sold them ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an unfortunate part of the history of it.
Yeah. That was Jesus on anxiety.
Okay. Well, not a great philosopher on that.
No. I just want to thank the Lord for our listeners.
Aren't we blessed?
We are, aren't we? Last time we asked you to help the illiterates in Afghanistan by donating to Humble Servant Charities by Don Potpourri and providing them free Bibles.
The Bibles are in English, which is proving to be a struggle, but you stepped up.
Now, I don't think I'm alone when I say my heart goes out to those poor people in Afghanistan.
Bless their hearts. With so many Afghanistanis making Bibles, there aren't enough of them farming, and starvation has swept their land. They need our help.
They need your help.
Amen.
That's why Humble Servant Charities by Don Potpourri is pivoting from helping the illiterates to helping those starving people and give them the sustenance they need.
That's right. Humble Servant Charities by Don Potpourri is dedicating enormous resources to feed their hungry souls with more free Bibles.
Praise the Lord, their problems are over.
Not so fast, because you know the old phrase, Josh. It takes a village to give Bibles to another village.
The poor, unfortunate people of Afghanistan need your support by supporting this other organization.
Literally dozens of percentage points of your donation go directly to helping people in need.
Linz, what kind of Bibles are these? Are they high quality?
Oh, yes. Humble Servant Charities by Don Potpourri made sure these Bibles would be the highest quality Bibles to honor the Lord. The Bibles are bound with locally sourced Afghanistani leather. It costs about $150 to manufacture just one Bible.
Do they have cows for leather in Afghanistan?
Nope.
Goats?
Stop asking questions.
Well, I'm sure it's ethical.
Use promo code BSFA at checkout to give a starving child 10% more Bible.
Humble Servant Charities by Don Potpourri is only recognized as a charity in the continental United States, the only country where Bibles are considered part of a balanced breakfast. This is watchfulness and faithfulness. So we're kind of hitting this phase where Jesus is talking about just a lot of attributes. You could say virtues, but it's not necessarily virtues. So this is Matthew 24, 36 through 51, Mark 13, 32 and 33, and then Luke 12, 35 through 46. Matthew's version goes like this: but about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. God, this is so weirdly written. Mm-hmm. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be in the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, and one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with the handmill. One will be taken and the other left. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this: if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. Truly, I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, my master is staying away a long time. And he then begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him to a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and, of course, gnashing of teeth. Yeah. He knew it was coming.
Yeah. So that's an analogy.
Yeah.
A big one, big metaphor, obviously. The master is God, or the Son of Man, Son of God.
Jesus, God, whatever.
And the leader of servants would be like somebody religious. And because it's been a while since Jesus rolled up on us, like we were like, oh, he's not going to come back soon. We're going to party.
Right.
And then he shows up and he's like, why are you partying? And now I'm going to cut you into pieces. Who is saying this? Jesus?
Jesus is saying this, yeah.
I mean, he's there. Jesus is there.
Yeah. He's talking about when he comes back.
He's talking about his return.
Yeah.
Okay. Not his return after he dies, like the 3 days, like his inevitable
No, the big return.
The one that everyone always talks about now, right?
That's what they say. Yeah. That's a good point, though. Like, I actually wonder now, I guess it would have to make sense that it would be, like, it was all written after the 3 days.
Right.
You know? So obviously they would be talking about, like, the end of times, Jesus coming.
So this is very much like a hellfire speech.
Yeah.
About the
again, this is
world.
an apocalyptic cult back then. Like this, when Jesus was an apocalyptic cult preacher, you know, or pastor or cult leader, it was all about the end times. And there was like a little bit of sprinkling in of like, also be a good person because the end times are coming.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of books of the Bible that we have yet to cover.
Yeah.
With one of them being
Revelations.
But does he get into like the I'm coming back again someday often?
Yeah, he does it does come up. We've talked about it a couple times for him talking about.
Well, I know that he's talked about like dying and then rising again.
I remember the first time I think we really talked about it was when he sent out the 12.
Right.
And said, you're not going to be done
until the Son of Man returns.
Yeah, you're not going to be done going throughout Israel talking about Jesus until
and then they came back like 3 days later.
Yeah, or something. We don't know exactly how long it was, but
okay. That if I was sitting there listening to this conversation, or I'm sorry, it's not a conversation. If I was sitting there listening to him orating, he hasn't made it clear that the idea would be that he's coming back, like, who knows when. To me, he's sitting here in front of me talking about when the Son of Man shows up. And I'm like, well, you're here already. What are you talking about?
If you were there and you were one of the disciples that he has explained a few times to about he's going to die and then come back 3 days later, I'd be confused because I would think, well, it's when you're resurrected that this is going to happen. But that's not what happens.
But he literally means, like, I'm going to die and I'm going to come back and then I'm going to die again, but not really.
Yeah.
I'm just going to rise to heaven. Is that what happens after?
He dies, he comes back, and then he goes to heaven. Yeah.
Right.
And then
at some point in time, God's going to be like, all right, it's time for you to go back.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the end times.
Right. Which everybody thought was going to be the year 2000.
Well, yeah. I mean, 2002, 2000, 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. I mean, literally every year there's somebody who's like, this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
And then it's always wrong.
Until that year, it's right.
And
then they'll be like, see, I called it.
Yeah. And I honestly, like, if we actually get to the point where the world is ending, I don't think Jesus is going to be there.
No.
No.
I don't think so either. I think the world could end. I don't think it'll have anything to do with Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
So that was Matthew's version. Luke's version is pretty similar, but there's no bit about Noah. Or was talking about that stuff. Mark's version is much shorter, and there's just the bit about the thief coming in the night.
Okay.
And then we get to a sexy parable.
Ooh.
It's the parable of the 10 virgins.
Ooh.
Yeah. Because there's nothing sexier than virgins.
There's nothing sexier than having sex with somebody who's never done it before.
Right. You know what I like in sex? Inexperience. So this is Matthew 25, 1 through 13. It goes like this. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps, but did not take any oil with them. The wise ones, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming. And they, and I told you this was a sexy one.
Sexy, yeah.
And they became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, the cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, "there may not be enough for both us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves at midnight."
Right.
Yeah. But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the others also came. "Lord, Lord," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I don't know you. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour."
Wait, so was this one dude marrying
all 10?
All 10?
All 10.
Turns out to 5.
Well,
right.
5, yeah, but he was supposed to marry 10.
10?
Yeah. And because they didn't keep their lamps lit, he's
had to
only
leave.
marrying 5.
Well, they had to leave. They weren't there.
Yeah.
It was totally like a...
There was a time.
Yeah.
There's a specific time.
Right. You had to be there when he showed up.
Yeah.
Or else you lost out.
And because the other ones were dicks,
mm-hmm.
they weren't able to actually get included on this.
Right.
Yeah. Which is really interesting. That was the thing that stood out to me, because like when I started reading this, I was like, oh, this is going to be about sharing with others.
Yeah, no.
And it's not at all.
It's about being prepared.
Yeah. It's because you're on your fucking own.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like the ant and the grasshopper.
The ant and the grasshopper.
Yeah. So like the ant prepares for the winter and the grasshopper doesn't. And then the grasshopper's like, "Ant, share your food with me for the winter." And the ant's like, "Fuck you. I gathered all this food so that I can make it through the winter." And then the grasshopper dies. Because he doesn't have any food for the winter. Do you not know that story?
What is that story from? Is that like an Aesop fable? Or?
I don't think. Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that one at all.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a similar story, right? The idea is like those who are prepared will reap the rewards of preparedness. But that is diametrically opposed to the thing that was earlier where he said not to worry about the future.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, literally just the story we read just right before that was like, don't worry about what's going to happen next. So one can argue that the 5 women who didn't bring the extra with them weren't worried about what's going to happen next.
Yeah. And that did literally come right before this.
Right.
Yeah.
The advice is contradictory. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's another, the end times are coming.
Right.
Thing where it's like, that's what you need to be worried about.
Is Jesus the bridegroom?
Yeah.
In both stories, he's pretty much said that half of the people are going to be with him at the end and half of them aren't. Because he talks about like, if you're in the field, one man, yeah. And if the women who are grinding, whatever that means. I just got a real sexy picture in my head when I said that.
Grinding with a hand mill.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. One of them will be...
I mean, how are they using that hand
right. Mm-hmm. One of them will be with him and one of them won't, sort of thing. So he has now in 2 separate stories that he's basically said, like, it's going to be about half of you that I expect to be ready, and half of you are just going to burn in hell.
Which does add up to, in the book of Revelation, when it says 144,000 are going to be taken. Because I think at this time, there's only like 288,000 people on earth. So there's cities in the middle, what is now the Middle East, that had populations greater than that at this time. Yeah. No, yeah.
I can't wait to get to Revelation. 140, like, I don't want to ask too many questions about it, but I've heard that number before, 144,000.
Yeah, whenever we talk about the J-dubs.
Right, because that's how many people are going to heaven.
According to them,
it's 144,000.
But that's not what it actually says. It says that 144,000 are going to be told a secret by God. And we don't know what the secret is, obviously, but like they just interpret that to mean those are the people going to heaven.
The secret of heaven.
I guess. Yeah. The secret is heaven.
I see.
So, Lindsay, you might not know this, but you have to repent or perish.
I mean, that makes sense. That's what Catholics do with confession.
They say that, yeah.
You have to confess before you die.
Yeah. Do you think confessing necessarily means you're repenting?
Well, it's supposed to mean that because they assign you to do the Hail Marys.
Right.
Right, which is repentance.
Right.
So the idea of that, of confessing, would be to repent.
Right.
Or else you wouldn't confess. You're only supposed to confess things that you want to repent.
Like to never do again.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's not how it works in Catholicism, right? You just can confess the same thing over and over and over again.
I masturbated 8 times since my last confession.
Which is why people...
I just talked to you this morning.
That's why I feel like that is a big reason why like Christians hate Catholics, is because of that whole thing.
Yeah.
Because of them being forgiven like every day and not ever changing their behavior.
I don't know if that's the only reason.
No, it's definitely not the only reason.
You guys have way more money than any of the other denominations.
I don't say you guys because I'm not Catholic. Yeah. But
sorry.
I wish
my apologies.
If they wanted to give me some of that money, I might. That might be how you get me to.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's been pretty apparent in the Bible the whole time, right? You're supposed to repent to your sins.
Yeah, you would think it would be.
Yeah.
So this is Luke 13, 1-9. It goes like this. Now there were some present at that time who told Jesus about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices. So,
wait, what?
Yeah, so let's get into this a little bit. So Galileans, as in from
Galilee.
From Galilee.
Yep.
And then Pilate, like as in Pontius Pilate.
Okay.
Yep. So
he's a Roman official.
Right. We don't actually have any recorded history of what this is referring to with the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices. So people think there might have been something that happened where a bunch of Galileans got slaughtered by Pilate, like when they were making sacrifices or something like that. But we don't have any records of this thing happening.
Okay.
So anyway, they bring that up. Jesus answers, do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans because they suffered this way? I tell you, no. But unless you repent, you too will all perish. Or those 18 who died when the Tower of Siloam fell on them. Do you think that they were more guilty than all the others living in Jerusalem? I tell you, no. But unless you repent, you too will all perish. Again, we don't have any records of this Tower of Siloam. So nobody knows where this would have been, what the story was behind it. But
wasn't that where that pool with the blind guy?
It's the exact same name. It's but this is a tower and not a pool. So we don't really know where either of those are. So it's interesting, though, that they are the same name.
Mm-hmm.
Then he told this parable. A man had a fig tree.
No.
It's not the same
thing,
man. But it goes to show you that Jesus hates fig trees. A man had a fig tree growing in his vineyard, and he went out to look for fruit on it, but did not find any. So he said to the man who took care of the vineyard, for 3 years now, I've been coming to look for fruit on this fig tree and haven't found any. Cut it down. Why should it use up the soil? Sir, the man replied, leave it alone for 1 more year, and I'll dig around it and fertilize it. If it bears fruit next year, fine. If not, then cut it down. And that's the story.
Okay, so I'm getting into the headspace of where I can make sense of this. And to me, that means...
Good luck.
No, I think I got it. I got it.
Okay, good. So, I did not.
Because it comes with the story of repenting, right?
Yeah.
So the idea would be that the fig tree is you or God. The fig tree is God. And his rewards are the fig fruit, right? And because you're being good, a good person to the tree, right? Then you would expect fruit to come. So like if you're being a good Christian, you would expect to bear the fruit, or not bear the fruit, have the fruit of that endeavor, right? So you're doing all of the things that you need to do in order to get the rewards of being a good Christian.
Okay. I think so. I think I'm following.
So you're doing everything you need to do. The fig tree is doing everything it needs to do. You're doing everything you need to do to the fig tree to get it to bear fruit. But it takes time. Like you can't just expect something to happen and then when it doesn't happen, be like, well, fuck it, let's cut it down. So if you're a good Christian and you're following all of the rules and stuff that they've set forth, and then maybe something bad happens to you, the idea wouldn't be to just stop being a Christian then. The idea would be you have to stay steady and keep fertilizing your faith.
Yeah.
Because eventually you will get the reward. You just don't know when it's coming.
Right. It's interesting because I never would have taken it that way because that would mean you're like saying, cut God down.
Well, no, you're abandoning your faith.
Right.
Yeah.
But it makes sense when you say it. Like
it
just, my first instinct was like, so you're saying cut God down? Like, right. But no, that makes sense. That's a good interpretation of it.
Thanks.
Like I did not see it that way. So yeah, and I don't know really for sure what others would say about that one because it's very confusing.
Yeah, I mean it is. I did have to do like a lot of like, okay, so like what sort of thing could I liken this to get an analogy out of it?
Yeah.
And that's where I went. But like, maybe not. Maybe that's not what it means at all. Maybe literally it's like fig trees only, like we only planted this 4 years ago and it takes 4 years for figs to grow on a fig tree. Have patience.
Yeah.
Like maybe the idea is patience.
Right.
And that's it.
Maybe it's that Jesus just fucking hates fig trees.
He does. He does hate fig trees.
As we'll find out. The next one I wanted to talk about, the last one, is healing a crippled woman. This is Luke 13, 10 through 17. On a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. Indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, the synagogue leader said to the people, "There are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath." The Lord answered him, "You hypocrites! Doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on the Sabbath day from what bound her?" When he said this, all his opponents were humiliated.
Is this John?
But no, this is Luke. All his opponents were humiliated, but the people were delighted with all the wonderful things he was doing.
Well, yeah. That sounds like a real sort of showboaty moment for Jesus.
Yeah. It really felt propaganda.
Yeah.
That's
why I asked if it was John, because I was like,
Yeah, because John really leans heavy on
the anti-Semitic.
Yeah, about
shit.
like the Jewish leaders like being against Jesus and stuff like that. He lays that on way heavier. It's
interesting because I would imagine that the Jewish faith leaders, they work on the Sabbath. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're allowed to.
So why wouldn't? Yeah. So why wouldn't Jesus be allowed to then? If he's also like a rabbi, and
they call him rabbi, but I don't think he's like a legit rabbi. Like I don't think he's recognized by the leaders as a rabbi.
The Jewish faith does not recognize Jesus as the Son of God, correct?
You mean like today and like in reality?
Like in the actual Jewish faith, yeah.
I think they
isn't he like one of the archangels, or he's like the archangel Michael?
That's Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, I think for Jewish,
God, it's all fucking confusing.
I know. For Jewish people, though,
Isn't he just like another prophet or something?
I think the official line is that he's a prophet, but not the Messiah,
right? Okay.
And in fact, my understanding, and I don't know if this is the case for modern day Judaism or not, but my understanding from reading through the Bible is there wasn't supposed to be like one Messiah.
Right.
You know, like that, like what you're told growing up in Christianity was he was the Messiah that was supposed to be called. And actually, like Messiahs were a king that arose when Israel needed a savior, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it was predicted for all these different calamities that happened in the past and never happened.
So like in modern day terms, like, let's look at the Ukrainian thing. Zelensky, right? Yeah. Could be like if you were
a Messiah.
If we were just thinking about it, like on the very let's not get into like what he believes religious wise or things like that. In terms of like being able to compare it to something that's happening nowadays.
Yeah.
With him stepping up and kind of being the leader of Ukraine and against what is happening there, you know, staying in the field and stuff like that. If you're looking at it like that, then he would be considered a Messiah,
right?
Under that auspice.
He yes, with the exception of the fact that it's specifically in the Bible called out that this would be a king of Israel.
Okay.
So
I mean, we don't know. Maybe he's Jewish. We don't know.
Well, Zelensky is Jewish.
Yeah, there you go.
but he's not like
that's right.
a king of the nation of Israel.
Right.
You know, but that's the thing is. That's the idea, is that a king would rise up and have power enough to destroy their enemies, but not like necessarily in a magical way either. I don't think shenanigans. Yeah. It's a different idea of what the Messiah is than what Christianity
believes.
Says it is.
So we just went through all these stories.
Yeah.
And how are these stories coming about? Is Jesus just standing somewhere telling these stories? Is that how we're getting these, or?
Kind of. That's kind of like where we're at right now, where it's just kind of like, it's just almost like a data dump.
Gotcha.
Of like, here's some speeches he gave.
Right.
You know?
It's not very fluid. I mean, and I know we're hopping around.
Yeah.
Kind of. So like when you were to read a gospel, like in its entirety, it might feel more fluid, I guess.
Right.
But the fact that we're hopping around so that we can stay consistent with the stories maybe makes it feel that way. It's kind of boring.
It totally is. Like it's super annoying when you go through multiples of these stories and they all have the same moral, and the moral is be ready. The end times are coming at any time.
Right.
Yeah. Or
also like I can work on the Sabbath to heal people. Right. Basically, that last one is just saying like, yeah, I know you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath, but this isn't work.
Yeah.
We're taking somebody who is burdened and unburdening them.
Yeah.
Much like you don't not feed your animals on the Sabbath. They still need to eat. We're also doing the same thing for this woman who's had scoliosis for the past 18 years.
Right. And a demon of scoliosis.
Yes. And I've cracked her back and now she can stand up straight.
Yeah. Jesus was a chiropractor.
He touched a spot on her spine and popped that plate back into place.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she could stand up straight. If anything, he's just a damn good chiropractor.
Everybody thought he was a carpenter. Nope.
Chiropractor. They got it. They start with C, both of them. So I could see the misstep there.
Yep. So yeah, I know we're kind of getting to times where we're just like dumping some stories, and I do kind of want to prune it down a little bit more, like because we don't need to hit all of this stuff. Yeah. But we're getting through it. We're getting closer to the end.
Yeah, and much like most people's like middle-aged years, like it's just a lot of talking and wind. And we can say middle-aged.
You're talking about this is Jesus's middle-aged years?
I mean, it's actually close to his later years because he does die so young. But
yeah,
I know he is young because he 32, right? That's the age at which
33, I believe.
So I mean, if we take into account that, especially since he knows that he's going to die.
Yeah.
If we're to believe that he actually has that knowledge ahead of time. I mean, if we're to believe any of this, but if we're to believe that he has that knowledge ahead of time, like, it kind of is like a middle-aged to elderly years.
In a sense, yeah.
So much like,
I mean, I preferred year one Jesus.
I mean, just listen to us, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you think about us 20 years ago, like, do you think we would ever think we're gonna get enjoyment about? I mean, maybe you, but like, do you ever think that we would just get enjoyment out of sitting around having these conversations for, I don't know, 2 hours every couple of weeks?
Right.
Instead, we're like, no, let's go to the bar and get drunk.
I'd be like, wait, I'm going to have a radio show?
I mean, we kind of go through it. Like, I mean, Jesus' early years were full of parties and like turning water into wine and shit like that. And now he's just like
hanging out with tax collectors.
Oh my God. And prostitutes or women of ill repute or whatever you want to call them. And now he's
getting anointed left and right.
Yeah. And now he's just like spewing just fucking shit at everybody. And
it's just end is nigh, end is nigh, end is nigh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for this week.
Right
and I forgot to look into what we got coming up.
Do we usually talk about what we have coming up?
I have the last few times.
Oh, I must black out when you start talking about that stuff. Well, we got more Jesus coming up.
We got more Jesus, a little bit more data dump. We'll see if we can figure out a way of spicing it up.
I certainly hope
get some Jesus spice in there.
Because I start to lose interest.
I know.
When it's just like story after story and they all kind of mean the same thing. And it's like housed behind this metaphor that only kind of makes sense if you really, really, really like do the mental gymnastics to get there. And that's just not fun.
Yeah, we do have one interesting one called Concerning Salt.
Oh, yay. Something to look forward to.
There's another one called Conditions of Discipleship, too. And then The Cost of Discipleship, which is probably the exact same. Yeah, it's the same verses. This is what's weird, too, is like we've gotten to this part in the timeline where like two of the lines are basically covering the same verses. And it's like, what the fuck is the point of these two lines?
Right.
So we're actually going through it faster because there's like duplicates. We do have coming up, I don't know if it'll be the next episode, but the prodigal son is coming up.
Isn't Jesus the prodigal son?
No, the prodigal son is somebody who left and went off on doing their own thing and then comes home.
Like Jacob.
And is welcomed home.
Yeah.
Kinda, but Jacob is like It's different. This is like somebody who's a sinful person. It's somebody who is like, who was a, we're going to cover this once we actually cover the story.
We can cut this out.
So, but it's somebody who was a Christian.
Because I'll have these same exact questions because I've heard the phrase, the prodigal son returns.
Yeah. But that's what we'll cover.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is what that means.
I will ask no more questions about this.
I mean, I could just explain it to you now, or we could save it for the episode.
Let's hold it, because if like the next couple of episodes are covering the same sort of bullshit we covered this one, we need something to spice it up a little bit.
That should be a good one. There's a lot of stuff where it's like on the law, on divorce, on temptations, on causing sin.
No. Ooh.
You know, so
like in others?
I guess.
That's fun.
But yeah, we'll try and breeze through those as quickly as we can.
Good, because if we don't, I'm going to live miserably ever after.
When all we want is for them to live miserably after. Wait, and they all live. They all live miserably ever after. Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. Help us share the good news by sending this to a friend or leaving a review to help others find us. Follow the show on Twitter @BibleAtheists, and we'll talk to you next time.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Do it. Do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Is that copyrighted?
Let's get into it. I just made it up. So
okay. That's impressive.